Visionary. By Douglas Milewski. Elemental P. United States. Copyright 2016 by Douglas Milewski. All rights reserved. Chapter 18. The mind, it seems, does not work as expected, and certainly not as Edna expected. My mind slipped backwards in time, but not to that day in the church. No, it slipped to an early December dance. I stepped off the train onto a platform in some small town beneath a rippled gray sky. I could smell the snow up there. Two girls stood before me, smiling and familiar. There was Fate. There was Cymbeline. They held a paper sign that said, "Welcome, John." Clarksville. I was in Clarksville. I could spot the tower of the girls' Theosophical School on the hill above the church. I fumbled with my suitcase, holding out one gloved hand. Speaking took effort, like a dream where you want to run but just can't run. I said, so unsure of these pretty girls. When did girls get to be so pretty? When had they stopped being so pretty? "I'm Sophia Eisenberg," said Fate, the plainish Indianish girl. The young me thought her unpretty, but grown me admired her handsome face and strong jaw, that wonderful mixture of the red man and the Jew, creating a face that begged for the canvas. That was the sort of face that any painter should adore. "Clementine Chapman," said Cymbeline, one of those pretty girls who promised to get even prettier as the years went by. Even now she was pretty enough to dull Sophia. Fate gave her a look for that statement. "Any relation to Johnny Appleseed?" I spoke those words even slower, stammering like wading upstream. "None," Cymbeline said. I think that she was lying. I realized that it had happened this way, and that it hadn't happened this way, and that it ought to have happened this way, all at the same time. Here was what I saw, what I knew, what I know now, and what I should have known, all tangled up into one moment. "Let's escort you to the wagon," said Fate. She took my right arm and Cymbeline took the other. "And where did that suitcase go?" A station wagon walked up, stopping before us, pulled by a handsome draft horse. Luke Mather hopped down from the driver's seat, opening up the doors on the wagon. He helped each of us in. The top was down, offering no shelter from the weather. "I'm not supposed to be here," said Luke, "but those two, they are who they are." That part actually happened. And so we were driving without arranging ourselves. Both girls snuggled up in their wool coats. Cymbeline had a fur ruff about her collar. One of them smelled of rose water. The town now passed by, Christmas decorations dull in the gray light, greens and reds doing their best to predominate. Cymbeline leaned over towards me. "Sophie can tell what papers know. Not what they say, but what they know." That seemed odd to me. I stammered, "Can't anyone?" Did I understand correctly? "Oh, anyone is supposed to be able to read objects, but she actually can do it." That answer confused me. My question felt like lead. "So you can't read?" "I can read, but not like she can. She can really read. She knows the truth by the paper she holds." I looked over to Fate, who frowned at her friend. "You weren't supposed to know." "Is that how you know who to help?" My words exhausted me. Fate looked away instead of answering. From the driver's seat, Luke spoke up, silencing the argument. "Don't you remember? I explained this to you once. That was on June 2, 1910. I'll repeat the story for you. Old McCune was a buddy of mine. He was pretty good as wizards go, but I always thought that his skills needed more work. For some reason, mostly because he was smitten, he married a young thing, an Indian girl, maybe 24. Too old for proper society, I expect. She gave him a girl. That marriage turned out well enough until his wife met Blavatsky. If there was anyone who'd kill a marriage, it was Blavatsky. I never did expect that marriage to last. The Lord never did marry, you know, despite all the hearsay over Mary Magdalene. He always had enough sense to stay out of women's ways." "Yes," said Cymbeline, "I told you that already. Don't you remember?" "I don't remember. I didn't remember." Fate wiggled next to me. "Did I tell you how I won the spot to greet you? Well, everyone knows that I know the rules better than everyone. And everyone knows that Indians don't lie, which is a lie. And so everyone came around asking when the contest ended, so I lied. I even told them the location of the box wrong. Nobody else got their name into the box besides me." "I feel honored," I said, feeling a little horrified. The last word took me 4 tries to say. Cymbeline said she talks about you all the time. Your roommates? Of course, said Fate. Don't you remember? I didn't remember. Why didn't you ever write back? Asked Fate. You said that you would. I love writing. Clementine loves writing. She made the sign. She has the prettiest handwriting in the school. We're women. Why wouldn't we write? I had no answer for that. Working up a response took an inordinate amount of effort for me. Now I felt like I was pushing myself through a crowd, always frustrated at moving forward. I thought that you were just entertaining me and that you didn't like me. None of you liked me. The girls responded by kissing my cheeks. That's nonsense, said Cymbeline. Don't you remember? Asked Fate. I didn't remember. The right word means everything, said Luke Mather, still driving us through town. The last few houses huddled up against each other. Beyond, we approached the gray lawn that hosted the school. How could it be noon? It seemed like evening now. Why were we the only light? We were greeted at the school by Headmistress Carpenter, a plumpish widow with salt and pepper hair tied up in a blue silk scarf. She looked just like the Baroness, but I knew that in reality she didn't look like the Baroness at all. Welcome, John. I am so happy to have you back with us again. I didn't recognize her. Have we met? Speaking to her felt easy. My mouth felt ungummed. Don't you remember? No. The headmistress took me by the arm, walking me into a cafeteria redecorated as a ballroom. A stage at one end let the school put on little plays. 2 musicians were there, a fiddler and a flutist. They played a waltz, so we danced. Mrs. Carpenter's fingers felt crooked. I saw fresh bloodstains on her gloves. Unlike my grandmother, this woman could dance, moving in 3/4 time like rocking on a chair. What else am I forgetting? I asked, still speaking easily. Surely all sorts of wonderful things. Why am I dancing with you? Why shouldn't I dance with you? This way I get my dance done early and the girls can all fight over you. The boys from town aren't nearly so exciting as you are. I saw no other boys. All around me the girls danced with other girls, waltzing badly. Trinity, said the headmistress. What? I asked. What did she mean? The waltz is like the Trinity. With 1 beat you have a drone, a monotone, a march. With 2 beats it's a 2-step hopping gliding. With 4 beats you have a polka, spinning and sprinting. But only with 3 beats, only with 3/4 time do you get the swirling, turning, beautiful cadence of the waltz. For 3 is a beautiful number, the only number beautiful enough to reflect the beauty of the divine. To intensify the waltz is only to intensify the beauty. To slow the waltz is only to intensify the beauty. The waltz is prayer. And thus God appears to us as the Trinity, for the Trinity is the most beautiful of all possible things. This confused me. Why are you telling me this? Because you are you. Who am I? You are the person who is talking to me. So can I ask you a question? That is my pleasure. I recalled a conversation that I had had with Mel once. He liked to poke at the mechanics of the universe. How come God can listen to prayers? Aren't we sinful creatures? How do prayers travel to him at all? Mrs. Carpenter's eyes smiled at the trick question. Very insightful. We live in this ether, and we are composed of bubbles in this ether. These bubbles are formed from the divine, so they are pure. When you speak with your spiritual mouth on the spiritual plane, your words emerge spiritually, composed of these bubbles. As evil and good cannot coexist, these bubbles from the divine must be pure, and so they travel from you pure to the divine pure, and so can be accepted by the divine. That made sense at the time. I spotted my friends again. Cymbeline wore a yellow dress while Fate wore a pink one. Aside from that, everything in the room seemed dominated by grays, browns, and bits of red. Look toward the corner, said the headmistress. Through that room full of girls dancing with other girls, I spotted a woman standing against the wall wearing a lime green dress trimmed with browns and grays. Fashion doesn't wear green. She does not belong here. She is not my student. You know her. Don't you remember? She was Edna Clark, but not Edna. It was Edna of a long time ago, as she had always wished that she would look. I don't want to talk to her, I said, but I did not remember why. The lion must lie down with the lamb, said Mrs. Carpenter. How? For we are astral bodies here, all on this higher plane coexistent with our own. Surely if you are here, in your astral body, she can be here in her astral body as well. She wants you to speak to her because I will not speak to her. I will not speak the word of my sorrow. I shared it with you once, don't you remember? I shared it with you so that you could know the word that came after, the word that was spoken when I said yes, the word that was spoken to the men, the words that were spoken to us women. Peace on earth, goodwill towards men. That is a word. I spoke that to you too, but you don't remember. I don't remember. The music wound down. Am I the only astral one here? You are all here. You have all purified yourselves through your selflessness and your thinking of higher thoughts, but not that woman. She has used a trick to be here, just as a thief may steal into a church. The music had ended. Darkness had fallen, pushed aside only by the electric lights above, weak as they were. The girls had fallen back into clumps, gathering about the warm cider. I walked over to Edna. My words felt leaden again. What do you think of the dance? Boring. When you told me that you got to go off on your own, I envied you. I had always been jealous of how you got to go, and I didn't. I always had to be at home for my father's parties. I always had to be there and perfect. I had to be his perfect girl, acting perfectly, looking perfect, being perfect. I was an actress, John, an actress. My first stage was my life, my whole life, treading the boards of my father's living room. He taught me well. He was an actor and director and playwright. He knew that stage better than most. You and Mother were fooled, but not me. Not you. Should I tell you a secret? Tell. We sat down on a bench, more like a pew than a bench. I knew that something was wrong. I figured it out early. I found out what Father was up to, and I could prove it too. He was secretly off to Catholic Church. A little confession here. A little mass there. Nobody knew, he thought. Well, I threatened to tell. If he wanted me to keep quiet, he had to give me what I wanted and keep on giving it. I wanted magic and he called me a dumb girl, but I got it, even if I am a dumb girl. And then there was money. I could have whatever I wanted. Of course, Father didn't have that much money, so I suggested that he take yours. I liked how that worked out. You worked hard and we got all the reward. Dad gave money to Alexandria, who I thought was pretty dumb, but she wasn't dumb at all. She fooled me. She fooled everyone. I caught her talking to the bursar. Setting up her marriage took a crazy amount of work, and off she went. Bye-bye, slutty Alexandria. And you never knew. If that truth was supposed to make me feel angry or vengeful, then Edna had no idea of me at all. What I felt in that moment was sorrow that Edna should have done such things. I felt sorrow for Alexandria and her first bad marriage. As for myself, I was done feeling sorrow. If not for Edna, I would have stayed an academic, been a lecturer during the revolution, and most likely been seized immediately, along with every other teacher in the school. Your vengeance saved my life. To be honest, I've been far happier out of academia. The next tune was a foxtrot, and there we were dancing again, just like we always seemed to be dancing together at those academic functions. Edna struggled against me, refusing my lead as she always did. I hated dancing with Edna. Why do the girls like you so much? Do they? I thought that I was boring. They do. Why don't you notice? Do you like boys better? I shook my head. No, I don't like boys better. I just don't notice. I don't know why. Why didn't you ever notice me? Her neckline was now deep enough to show her chest a little, pushing up her small breasts. I don't know. Think back, said Edna, stepping on my feet again. Think back to those social functions. An adult bumped into us, so I scooted us away a bit. All around us, faculty danced, many no better than us. Edna took my hand, pulling me through the crowd, over to the stage that dominated the reception room in Burke Hall. I lifted her onto the ledge, then hopped up myself. The decorations were all still red and green and gray. The season was still Christmas. Edna wore a ridiculously big bow. I had forgotten about these bows. I hate them. I always hated them. Her dress was still lime green. I searched for faces in the crowd, seeing no friends other than Edna. I did see many mentors, my old teachers, some administrative staff, and the Clarks. Off near the snack table, I saw my grandmother. "How did you get into this school anyway? What did you do?" "I don't know. I heard it was something bad. My dad keeps talking about it." "I don't know. Don't you remember?" "No," I said, but this time I heard my own distress. This was the distress of both the child me and the adult me. The child could not bear to remember, and the adult despaired in remembering. The child could not understand, and the adult did understand. "You can tell me. I keep secrets." "I don't want to remember." "Just tell me a little. It doesn't have to be a secret. Was it true? Where did it happen?" I shook my head. "I'll give you a kiss if you tell me." I gave her a look that only a 10-year-old boy can give. Why would I possibly want to kiss a girl? "Where is home?" "Somewhere," I said. From here I didn't know the way home. We wandered into the night. I didn't remember the university at all. Everything seemed disarranged, buildings all looking familiar, but nothing where it ought to be. Dashing about here and there, I didn't find home. This place wasn't home anymore. Mrs. Clark came outside. "John, what are you up to?" "I can't find home." "Then go ask your grandmother." So I went back in, winding my way through the crowd to where my grandmother tatted, making lace for yet another baby shower. "I can't find my way home," I told my grandmother. "What did I tell you? Don't you remember?" I did not need to answer the question. We were now home in my home in that crowded little house. Edna and I sat on the stairs side by side. Somehow a Christmas tree was wedged into one corner. Alexandria walked up to us, her hair falling in ringlets. She had washed her hair last night, so they came out extra round. "Mom wants to know if she's staying." I looked at Edna. "Her. She can stay for dinner if she wants." "She's going." "I'm staying," said Edna. We all sat down at that big table. My whole family was there, with my grandmother sitting at the head, and my mother sitting at the other head. My father was off at the factory. As my friend, Edna sat next to me on the bench. "Dear Lord," said my grandmother, "we thank you for what you have provided." "Amen," said the table. I had always thought of my grandmother as very old, as I was so young and she was not, but looking at her now, she wasn't very old at all. Nor was she any happier, it seems, than I remembered her. My mother looked downright youthful, no older than myself. She had a brightness to her that I had never noticed before, with a smile that melted my soul and made me cry. That was my mother, who I had not seen in 10 years. I knew that she wasn't real, I knew that she was really an image, but I didn't bother stopping myself. Getting up from that bench unbidden, I threw my arms about her. "Why all the fuss?" Mother asked, shifting the baby, putting her spare arm around me. "I missed you. I'm not done. I missed you too. Sending you away was the hardest thing that I ever had to do, but I had to, you know. God gave you a great gift. He gave you a greater gift than any of us knew what to do with, so we sent you to a better place. I don't think that any of them there knows what to do with you either. The only one who seems to have any sense is your tutor, but they don't let him teach you. Sometimes I think that I should have just kept you home and let you grow up like anyone else. I would have liked that. So would I want all my children with me, but it would not have worked out. All the other children would have known, and they always would have known, and with your delicate heart, I don't think that you would have done well. You were already a little lonely, but after that day in church, nobody would dare play with you again. Going away, you had nothing to lose." Edna interrupted. "Can we go for a walk?" "No," I said, unwilling to let go of my mother. "Yes," said Mother. "You're all done and you've cleaned your plate. But only this once because she's a guest." My plate was clean. I didn't remember eating. So we went for a walk. Edna and I held hands and my grandmother followed behind. A few porch lights lit the streets, but that was enough. We could see. The familiar gravel-like substance which made up the street scrunched a little with loose stones. Despite being almost Christmas, there was no snow to be seen. Those same rippling clouds were still up there. Edna looked to my grandmother. Which way to church? My grandmother pointed. 3 blocks? So Edna took us that way, walking those 3 blocks, passing by buildings that I knew all too well, all exactly as they had been in those days. No cars sat along the streets. The horses had all been put away for the night, being not at all like motor cars. The church stood where I expected it to sit, not very large and not very amazing. This was just a neighborhood Catholic church. I've seen Masonic halls that were larger. There was a little graveyard by the church, although this church didn't have a graveyard. This was the graveyard from Ivy Hall, the one where I used to play with Remy. He was there again, racing his car across the tops of the tombstones. Remy? I said. He didn't notice. Remy, I said again. This time he turned. What? It's me, I said. So, he said, waiting. I waited as well. When I said nothing, he returned to racing his car, crashing it against his own tombstone. Why doesn't he remember me? I don't know. He's not my problem. Let's go in the church. So we went in. I used both hands to pull open that door. Many hands had worn off the paint along the edge. Entering revealed a church lit from the inside. Most of the light came from the overhead lights, which from below looked like wagon wheels with bulbs screwed into them. Some lights came from the candles. No light came from outside. I took off my hat on entering. We sat down in a pew among the other worshippers. Christmas Mass preparations were almost complete. A woman, a guest singer, chatted quietly with the choir director. To my left, the statue of the Virgin Mary stood silent, looking too holy, her fingers not broken at all, her head crowned by stars. Her face looked serene, but her eyes were clever. Why hadn't I ever noticed her clever eyes before? So what should I do? I asked St. Mary. Listen, she said. The choir assembled, and the organist began playing Ave Maria. I heard the tune anew, for with this particular singer in this particular church in my particular seat, I could hear the divine words buried deep within the music and the words. I could tell that there were 2 words there, intermingled of 2 emotions. Each was almost within my grasp, but to touch it I would surely destroy my perception of the other word. One word described the fundamental good news of the world, that God does love us and that He truly cares for us, not as some benevolent father figure looking down from on high, but as people. Peace on earth, goodwill towards man. The other word was that of misery, sorrow, of losing a child. A wail moved through the tune. Her child was dead. Despair. Her child was risen. Hallelujah. I hear 2 words. I don't want to choose either. You chose before. Choose that again. You were right the first time. Choose it again. Say what needs to be said. If we are to save this corrupt world that's falling apart, if we are to prevent it from sliding into a second destruction, this time by fire and winter, you must speak the word. I don't want to. I won't speak. I looked at the Virgin Mary. What should I choose? She raised one eyebrow at me. The last time you chose nothing. And so you are nothing. Can you continue being nothing? Who benefits by that? Does Edna benefit by that? Do your other friends benefit by that? What of the Baroness? What of your mother? What of the salesgirls at the department stores? I said they gain nothing. Each gains a little nothing, where each might gain a little something. Add that up and that's a huge amount of good. So I should choose the bright word? I won't answer that question. I think that the best answer is the most selfless one. To speak someone's sorrow is just as important as speaking their joys. What of Charlie's sorrow? What of all the companions that he lost? What of Fate's sorrow, always seeing the man that she loves but never being able to touch his heart? What of your sorrow for your family? Speak everyone's sorrow, speak of the despair in their lives, and then they can speak of their own despair, and by it all put the despair behind them. That's catharsis. I thought about it for a bit. Even deep into whatever it was, whether this Mary was real or not, or this Edna real or not, the decision that lay before me was real, not some construct of my mental self. As I touched that decision, I felt that fear again within me. I had no idea what would be true after I said a word. Before me lay everything and nothing at the same time. In my mind, those were my words, in my memory, inextricably bound with my power, unable to escape, unable to rest quietly. Two ideas, almost opposites but not quite opposites, for words and ideas are not mathematical functions. Right and left seem like opposites at first, but in fact they are choices. Choose right and you walk downtown, but choose left, you cross into the freight yards. The results cannot be understood as opposites. The dynamics of up take you against gravity, resisting you, but the dynamics of down put you into dirt, resisting you. Opposite but not opposite. The choir had stopped. The church had fallen silent. That moment was gone, the word having gone with it. So the Mass went on. The priest blessed the host, placed it in the monstrance, then with his wrapped hands held it up for all to see, words in Latin falling from his lips. Edna looked at me then in amazement. She looked as if she had only just realized for the first time that the world did not exist in black and white. I felt her presence slipping, so I held onto her hand. I was wrong, she said, drifting away, pulling me along. And so the vision ended.